Hey everybody, this is JDGaming. It's been way too long since I've done a deck profile for this channel, so I decided why not go back to the last deck that I had kind of debuted on this channel and go through and finally profile that Chaos OTK strategy. So it's a blend of a lot of different things that you may have seen before. You see, common themes like Norden with instant fusion, things like ride into mill, a bunch of tuners and stuff to the grave, as well as just some standard chaos monsters, BLS, the sorcerer that's now unlimited, as well as the baby dragon. So it's a very fun strategy. It's definitely different from how I normally play slower paced games with a lot of my Naturias, trap tricks, and other things. So I don't know. I feel like it's a ton of fun. Maybe you guys will find the change of pace refreshing as well. So I decided, let's profile this thing. I will be doing just as normal, kind of like an article-esque, build this deck from scratch. But if you don't want to see that, you can go and click Norden. You know how fast he makes games. Just click him and you'll be taken to the end of this video where I will be doing kind of a dueling network style, alphabetical by card type profile of the entire list. So other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As always, we're going to start off by envisioning our opening play for this deck. So, Chaos has a lot of options for how it wants to start, but for the main part, we want to get something in the grave so that we can get stuff rolling. Once you have at least one light or dark in the grave, thanks to like the baby dragons, you can usually do something. It's not a surprise then that we will start with 3 copies of Raiden. His ability, of course, lets us mill up to 2 cards immediately, and then in the end phase, if he sticks around, mill 2 more. And because he's a tuner, he opens up a lot of really good plays with Norden as well. Pretty standard there. We're, of course, playing the 2 charge of the Light Brigade to increase the consistency with which we can get him, and actually function kind of like a power card, because, to be truthful, using Charge of the Light Brigade, potentially milling Raiden, and then fetching one of our Luminas, will actually do a lot more damage in the long run, because now we can just dump the extra cards from our hand, setting our graveyard up even further, while getting Lumina and a free Raiden on board. Raiden then can, of course, mill even more cards, and then we can go in synchro for one of our big hitters. So this is our core Lightsworn engine that gets the bulk of our graveyard setup going. Lumina also starts the trend towards actually getting some monsters onto the board with which we can attack. Following this pattern, we will be running 3 copies of Instant Fusion to have access to double Norden. Now, I do realize, yes, I am proxying this with the Korean copy, but I just couldn't justify opening another one of those promo packs for a card that will probably get hit fairly soon. But while it lasts, Instant Fusion's a great way to get your tuner monsters like Raiden and some other ones that we'll introduce onto the board really quickly. You don't even need your normal summon, and every time you can get a free special summon of a monster in a deck like this, it becomes, just swifter victory. With just this engine here, we can easily play level 7 monsters and level 8 monsters. So, to go through those choices very briefly, the ones I've chosen for this deck are Ancient Sacred Wyvern, because with light monsters with the Lightsworns, we can actually just push for game right at the beginning. The way you use this card is you attack with everything else you have on the board, and then this thing pretty much absorbs all the damage you've done to your opponent as extra raw attack points, so we can go and win easily with that. Black Rose is kind of a contingency card, but because of some other tech choices we will be playing, we will be running a Bulb. You can potentially just win the game with its flip effect. We have the Black Rose Moonlight Dragon as kind of a control card if a game does go long, but also to just move stuff out of the way to win, and one Clearwing Synchro Dragon, which will let us power through such threats as Gores, because as soon as that monster hits the board, its token generating effect will just cause this thing to just gain attack points and kill the Gores. So very powerful options at 7, and we can of course bring those out really easily using Raiden. I'll put these over here so we can see them. And then we have, for our 8s, Angel of Zera and Scrap Dragon. So these things, Scrap Dragon lets us get rid of some of our alternative monsters that we'll be bringing to the board later, and the Angel of Zera lets us go, and if we banish him, for whatever reason he dies, we'll get him right back for free. So synergy in this deck makes him worth playing. I also have one more non-generic synchro, and that is Michael, the Arc Lightsworn at level 7. This thing, of course, fits with the Lightsworn theme very well. Remove a monster for 1,000 points, which is pretty much free in this deck. Extra mills, and even life points regenerated for longevity should we require it. So 5 level 7s, 2 level 8s, that is our extra deck thus far. Then we're going to add some more tuners to the mix to ensure we get the most out of this engine that we've started to lay down. The foundation's forming strong, but we need more power plays. So we will be running the 1 glow-up bulb as a level 1 tuner, and in addition, a pair of Jet Synchron. So Jet Synchron is, in many ways, even better than glow-up bulb in this deck, because by using the revival effect to send a monster from your hand to the grave, you can easily send that one light or dark monster that we will use for eventually our baby Chaos Dragons here. So these guys need the opposite attribute of themselves to be banished from the grave to summon. So White Dragon, you banish a dark, dark, you banish a light, and you get them to the board. They also work kind of like a pseudo Tengu by fetching the other copy whenever they get sent to the graveyard, and that's a mandatory effect for synchro summons and such, so you don't even miss timing. And that means you can go and summon multiples of these, at least 2 of them, each turn, and that will let you bring out tons of really powerful level 5 synchros with this engine here, allowing us to bring out some really amazing game-winning monsters. To increase the consistency of this, we will be running these 3 power spells. Foolish Burial is a no-brainer in plant synchro type decks. Lets us fetch Glow-Up Bulb immediately, and because of Glow-Up Bulb's own cost to mill from the top of the deck, it's always going to be live with Foolish Burial. 1 for 1 is amazing because, just like the Jet Synchron, it forces us to load up a monster to set up these baby dragons down here, while bringing out a Jet Synchron or Glow-Up Bulb for double use. And tuning lets us yard 1 monster in our grave. Potentially, it might be a spell, but with the ratios in this deck, it will most likely be a monster, while fetching our Jet Synchron, who could potentially go and mill some other stuff as well. So, all in all, a nice balance of power spells that will allow us to fetch these tuners to then reuse with these guys. And the best part with these baby dragons is because you can use 1 copy of each every turn, and they cycle through each other, we're going to be able to use the double summoning effects of these tuner monsters to bring out 2 level 5 synchros all at once. And these level 5 synchros are definitely worth running. Here they are. We have our, not Haster, we have our Mateys. This thing lets us power through any type of back row, hand trap, grave defense, whatever, and land a hit. Chanbara is my new personal favorite of the 5, so this thing came out in High-Speed Riders, and it hasn't seen tons of play, I don't believe, but it's a generic 5 that says, every time it battles during either turn, it will gain 200 attack points, and it can attack twice each turn. So it starts off at 2,000, but as soon as you declare that first attack, it goes up to 2,200. It can then launch an additional attack for 2,400, so you can do 4,600 direct damage just by using this guy. And because we can do 2 synchro summons each turn using this engine, we can easily go Hyper Librarian first, then drop this, to be able to draw a free card and propagate our combos. From there, we put on a whopping, 6,600 damage on the board, and so at that point you can easily just go and, wait, no, it's already 4,600 here, so this is going to be 7,000 damage on the board all at once. We can easily then just drop a single Caius or drop, something else and just win the game, and we don't even need our normal summon a lot of the time, which is phenomenal. With these cards, the level 5s, there's 5 summoning engine. We can also summon Trishula quite easily. Nice bonus of this deck. You just go double 4 with a 1. That's a Trishula. Sometimes you just want to devastate your opponent's field, so that will be the best option. And then, because of the 4s, we will be playing Castel as our single rank 4. This thing over 101 because it can push a lot more stuff off the board, and that is what allows us to win with this type of a spam deck. So ridding your monster's field is really what we want to do, so that's why we'll play that. And then we have the old entity Haster. This is in case we do draw Lumina, and we have the level 1 tuners. Because the level 1 tuners are recursive, and heck, we can even get them off of Lumina, there are going to be instances where you might want to summon your Lumina, dump something, revive the Raiden. But then you have the level 1 tuner in the grave, so maybe you bring that back with Lumina, bring out Haster, and now you can go and sync these 2, or you can drop a baby dragon. Haster's ability says that if this thing is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, you blank one of your opponent's monster cards by equipping it, so now it cannot attack and its effects are negated. And that's a mandatory effect. Then when this thing leaves the board again, so perhaps you go with a baby dragon, and you're able to summon a scrap dragon or whatever, you can easily then kill Haster to steal your opponent's monster to work for you, and that does double duty, getting rid of your opponent's defense and giving you another fighter on your board. So Haster is actually a pretty interesting generic 4, and it fits with the theme of empty your opponent's field while getting you new monsters. So that is why we are playing Haster at 4, and that's the 15-card extra deck there. From there, we will likely, at the end of our combos, have enough monsters in the grave to drop at least one of these bad boys. I found that playing the full Chaos Suite of 1 BLS and 3 Chaos Sorcerer doesn't clog all that often because you can afford to dump them from your hand to be able to use something like the Jet Synchron or the 1-for-1. So they end up fueling your baby dragons even if you don't get to summon them out. And if you do get to summon them out at the end of your combo, then more power to you. You have the ability to just go and attack for an additional 23 or 3,000 or more, or just banish your opponent's monster, get it off the board, and then continue a synchro summon using the recursive tuners. So very powerful chaos monsters. No reason to not include them in this deck because we can work around the dead drawing aspect. We are also playing 3 Yugioh, so this thing, if you haven't seen it in Cosmo and stuff by now, is one of my new favorite cards. And a 1700 attack and says during either player's battle step, so pretty much as soon as you declare you enter battle phase, or between attacks. You can go and special summon this card from your hand for free, gain 1,000 life, and then, if he's on the board, he can also sack himself at any time to power up one of your other monsters by 1,000 points for an entire turn cycle, both your turn and your opponent's turn. This means he single-handedly can be special summoned, do 1,700 direct damage if it attacks, then power something else up for 1,000, so he himself accounts for 2,700 additional points of damage. You can see how easily we get the Librarian combo with the Hi-Speedroid Chanbara, drop a Yugioh, that's game out of nowhere, so we need to play 3 of these things. It's also just an amazing hand trap. If your opponent happens to catch you in a weird situation and you haven't won for some reason, you can go and just drop this to the board. It will also absorb 2,700 points worth of damage by gaining you that 1,000 and being a 1,700 attacker, which means you can protect yourself from your opponent's threat. It's also nice to be able to pump one of your weaker monsters onto into a higher attack. Maybe you want to power up that that Clearwing Synchro Dragon so your opponent can't touch it, or something like a Black Rose Moonlight Dragon that might be vulnerable because of its relatively low attack points. Yugioh prevents that, so very versatile card all around, definitely worth using. We're playing 1 Mind Control to help get rid of our opponent's monster. This is kind of like Haster. I mean, if you think of it the other way, you guys are probably familiar with Mind Control. Mind Control is phenomenal for getting rid of your opponent's defenses and giving you an attacker. Well, not immediately to use, but with your tuners or synchro materials, an attacker. Haster does the same thing. Raigeki gets rid of all your opponent's monsters no matter what setup they have pretty much, so you just can hopefully push through that. And then we're going to play some tricky cards to get rid of your opponent even further. Double Enemy Controller lets us go and take our baby dragons off the board, fetch a new copy, and move your opponent's monster, and this time you can attack with that guy, or you could do everything else that you normally would with the Mind Control. So you could steal it and use it for a material, a tribute summon, or whatever. You could do so many things with Enemy Controller. It's definitely worth running. But I only chose to run 2 just because I wanted some other things instead of the 3rd copy, just to balance out the deck a little more. Following with that theme, we are also playing 2 Caius. We can actually combine Caius with Enemy Controller, obviously. Steal your opponent's monster by getting rid of a baby dragon, fetch a baby dragon, sack your opponent's monster, get out a Caius, banish something. Heck, you could even summon out the other baby dragon and just sack that with Caius and fetch another copy of the baby dragon for next turn. Definitely tons of plays, and tons of tribute fodder in this deck makes Caius worth it. In addition, if 2,400 attack isn't enough for you for some reason, you can go and banish your opponent's monster by summoning this, recur your tuner, and sync up for a different guy instead. So, tons of ways we can use Caius as well. Then some additional cards, basically just to make sure this deck isn't an all-or-nothing deck. We're playing 2 copies of Lila, which will let us use Charge and Lumina to then go get rid of your opponent's back row. This will make sure your plan sticks. It's not as powerful as summoning Raiden, obviously, but this deck definitely has enough firepower that you can afford to play a card or 2 that will let you stick your moves in the following turn if you haven't gotten an open shot already. So double Lila will allow you to do that. We're playing Double Veiler. This thing's phenomenal because we can use it to protect ourselves during the opponent's turn, but also use it as a level 1 light tuner monster for discarding, for using as the tuner monster. It just synergizes so well that I see no reason not to run 2 of these things. And a little less synergy here, but Max C definitely allows us to draw into our combo pieces. Maybe we're going second and we can just use this thing. It makes our deck a lot more consistent, and because it's probably the only card that we can't proactively use in our opening hand, I still think it's worth having. It's only 2 copies, and again, you still can use it kind of proactively in a roundabout way, like the Chaos Monsters. Just dump it from your hand as that monster card if you want to use 1-for-1 or Jet Synchron. So very useful cards all around because of the structure of the deck. And then we have one Allure of Darkness. This gets further mileage out of monsters like Yugioh, because you can only summon 1 of these per turn, or something like a Chaos Sorcerer, or Caius. You have dead monsters, just banish them, draw 2, get your combos rolling, and win the game. As usual, thanks again if you watched the video in its entirety. It was a lot of fun to put together, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Without further ado, we're going to go through the deck profile a la Dueling Network, kind of organized alphabetically by card type. So first we have 2 of the Black Dragon Collapse Serpent, 1 BLS Envoy, 2 Caius, 3 Chaos Sorcerer, 2 Effect Veiler, 1 Glow Up Bulb, 2 Jet Synchron, 3 Yugioh, 2 Lumina, 2 Lila, 2 Max C, 3 Raiden, 2 White Dragon Wyverburster. So that's our monster lineup. It is a total of 27 of these things. Then the rest are just 13 spells. We have Allure of Darkness, 2 Charge of the Light Brigade, double JDGaming, 1 Foolish Burial, triple Instant Fusion, 1 Mind Control, 1 1-for-1 Raigeki, and a single Tuning. And then, that's 40 for the main deck to maximize our consistency. For our extra, we have, of course, our 1 level 4 in Old Entity Haster. We have Armades, Hi-Speedroid Chanbara, and TG Hyperlibrarian for our 5s. No 6s. I just find you can get around playing no 6s in this deck. So we focus on 7s instead. We have Ancient Sacred Wyvern, Black Rose Dragon, Moonlight Dragon, Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and Michael, the Arc Lightsworn. Then we have for 8, Angel of Zera, Scrap Dragon, and then for 9, Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. 1 Castel at our rank 4 slot, and double Norden. I am proxying one by using the Korean version, which obviously isn't TCG legal, but I don't know, I just feel like this card's probably going to get hit soon, so I just didn't see a reason to go and play 2 English copies. But that is the deck. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the strategy. Obviously, it borrows bits and pieces from a lot of other famous strategies, so it's a little different from the typical deck that I build, completely from scratch. But I still feel like it's a fun, different take, kind of my version of how I would make a Chaos Cheese OTK strategy, and it's definitely a blast to play because of the completely different playstyle and speed compared to a lot of the control-oriented decks that I typically build for this channel. So once again, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.